We are human. We acknowledge the mistake, we address the mistake, we document the mistake, and that is what really matters. And I've been in a few FDA inspections, and there's been instances where procedures weren't followed or audit plan or study plans were not correctly followed. And the fact that our documentation showed we identified it, we acknowledged it, we addressed it, we put corrective action in place, and then we put a preventative action in place that was music to the inspector's ears to just see that instead of us trying to hide it and trying to put a bunch of explanations in place that blamed other people or blamed other situations, we said, you know what? Yes, we missed it. We missed it. We did not follow our process like we should have. This is what happened. This is how we corrected it. This is how we put it in place to ensure it didn't happen again.
Research quality can feel complex, and knowing where to start is often the hardest part. Welcome to the Quality Assurance Podcast, where we bridge the gap between uncertainty and action with smart, simple, and sustainable solutions that actually work. This special 6-part series is brought to you by PRN Pharmaceutical Research Network, LLC, your partner in ophthalmic clinical research with built-in quality and compliance expertise. Welcome your host, Chris Milawski, alongside the CEO and co-founder of PRN, Jeanette Stewart, and quality assurance expert, Ashley Hehr.
Excellent. Welcome back, everybody. We'd like to, again, I would say how happy we are that you joined us back for our podcast, Quality Assurance Podcast, that's being sponsored by PRN Pharmaceutical Research Network, the best-in-class ophthalmology CRO. We are joined once again today by Jeanette Stewart with PRN and Ashley Hehr, our quality assurance expert. Good afternoon to everybody and welcome again. Mistakes happen is today's topic. I know if we could find a way to dub in the scary music and whatnot. This is one of those topics that a lot of people, they don't really like to talk about. We all would love to assume that everything just goes along as perfectly planned. But as we discussed on a couple of previous podcasts, a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, different vendors, as we've talked about, different processes and procedures. Everyone has their own SOPs, whether they're going to be abiding by them or not abiding by them. A little bit of irrelevant at this point in terms of this discussion, but in terms of mistakes, when you're doing clinical research, mistakes are going to happen because we are human and humans make mistakes. So today we're going to talk about this topic. And we're going to be touching base on appropriate documentation and how you can follow up when mistakes do happen. Ashley, I think we're going to start talking about appropriate documentation. And I'm going to mention an acronym that I would have to say, even to this day, I still have to explain to some people what this is, but we call it ALCOA-C plus now. We've got every year we have a new acronym added. Let us know a little bit about ALCOA and how this is going to fit in with our documentation processes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like you said, I'm going to break up this discussion into two different segments. One is going to be actually generation of documentation, ensuring you have well-designed forms, templates that are clear and easy for team members to complete. And then we're going to discuss when there is an issue identified, how do you correctly identify it, process it, risk analysis, and then obviously put corrective actions and preventative actions in place. So just like you said, ALCOA principles. So this is not just a concept that's been put into the industry. It actually needs to be demonstrated through documented evidence. And so all of these different letters stand for something. So A is attributable. So whenever somebody is doing an action or completing something, we should be able to recognize that person completed it. Who took the vital signs? Nurse XYZ. It should be very clear who obtained the information. Same with electronic systems. We should be able to see who actually captured the data within the system. So that's why we have user IDs and specific user requirements when someone is using an electronic system. So that's the A. What's the L? It needs to be legible. It needs to be readable and permanent. So you have to be able to actually read what is written. I know people get very fast and they scribble and you can't tell a difference between a 9 and an 8 and a 6 and a 5 and everything looks the same. But making sure that the numbers or the letters that you write are clear and also making sure that you are obtaining or retaining documentation or data in the retention period at times that are described.
Hey, Ashley, what if I have like
Yep.
a really small box to put a correction in? I know what I would suggest a study site do, but what might you suggest that a study site do, or somebody who has to correct something?
I'm always someone that likes to use a little footnote. So if you have a small
Yeah.
box and you don't have enough space, but you have space at the bottom of the page, put a little star, and at the bottom put a star, and then write completely what you wanted to, or write what you can in the small box, legible, and
Yeah.
put continued, and then put your little asterisk and go below. But never try and cram 50,000 tiny letters into a small spot where
Yeah.
nobody can read. So that's usually footnotes are usually the best
Yep.
option in that case, just so that it's very clear that it's a continuous of that small box, but you're not going to try and cram it in all at once.
Completely agree.
So the C in ALCOA, contemporaneous. So data is recorded at the time of activity. This is very important. So you want to ensure that your source documentation aligns with your visit dates. You want to make sure you're recording things as they happen. This can become an issue if there's a questionable backdated entry or a delay without justification. That can throw in red flags to the agencies and regulators, so that you want to make sure you're obtaining data and you're documenting the data in real time, and you're not going back and doing back entries or backdating. Original. So original, first recording or first instance of or true certified copy. You want to make sure when you are obtaining information, you obtain the original source. You never want your original source to be a sticky note. You want it to actually be on the document that you were using. So making sure that your source documents have a spot, and that you are making sure that your coordinators and the people in the clinics are using them instead of writing down on a sticky note. That actual sticky note becomes your original source, and you don't want sticky notes. So making sure that you're actually recording original entry on the actual source document. And then obviously accuracy, making sure your data is accurate, complete, and actually reflective of what you saw, what you witnessed, and what when you were talking to the patient or seeing the patient. Having a lack of clear source could cause data reliability concerns. And that's something you don't want to have spark the attention of a regulatory agency. You don't want people to go, oh, this doesn't look like the original source, or this doesn't look like it's completed appropriately or explained appropriately. That can bring your data, the integrity of your data, into question, and you don't want to do that. So making sure that you follow these ALCOA principles: attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate. And then obviously we have the C plus now, which is complete, consistent, enduring, available. All of those components are what you need to ensure that your data is reflective, your documentation is reflective of the data you've obtained.
Ashley,
Yes.
do you remember not so long ago, maybe a decade ago, when most people wrote a paper check, right? So to pay your bills, you'd write a check, you'd hand sign it, put it in the mail, and off you go. So the same thing. There's a big difference between a $10 check and a $10,000 check, but it's just a couple of little zeros, right?
It's all good. Yep.
Now we do it because we're careful of the data we enter into electronic payment. But in those days, you looked very carefully, and the bank would match the signature to the signature on the card on file. It's all the same principles, that if all the details don't add up, then they're not going to pay. They're going to deny payment for the bearer holder of the check.
Yeah.
So I like to think back to that, because it kind of clarifies for me, this is why source is so important, and we have to take such care with it. The other question I have is, why do you think people are tempted to use sticky notes? What do you think the motivation is? Is it because they want to change things?
No, I think it's easy access. I think people aren't always prepared, and don't always have the documentations that they need right in front of them. So it's easy. You can a lot of nurses or coordinators carry sticky notes in their pocket, so they can easily grab out a sticky note, write on it. That, I think, is the reason. But having documentation that is the correct source documentation present and available is what you should use when capturing data.
Yes, I think that's right. I think another potentially motivating factor is people want their source to look perfect. So they go, if I write it down on the source, but then I see there's a mistake, I got to line it through, cross it out. It's going to be messy. And I don't want it to be messy. I want it to look just perfect. So they'll do the sticky note thing. But to your point, those sticky notes can disappear very easily. So whatever the motivation is wrong.
Absolutely. But having perfect source is not always the best thing.
Yes.
Having any mistake, you want to tread the water lightly when it comes to that, because people do make mistakes and it's okay. It's okay to make a mistake. It's really about how you appropriately address it is really when it comes into ensuring that you're addressing things appropriately.
And ultimately, regulators know people make mistakes. And if they walk in the door and they see uber clean source, they will start digging because they know that there's no way anybody could have this good of source. Perfect source. There is no such thing. People make mistakes. They put stuff in the wrong book. They put the wrong date. They misspell a word. They superimpose numbers and dosages. They superimpose dosages. All kinds of things they do. So I want to touch upon a couple different things that Jeanette said. So regarding the paper checks all those years ago, Jeanette, when you think about it, that might really be considered maybe the first form of printed source documentation. Because not only do you have to write the number that you want to pay on the check, you have to write it out. You have to write out the physical amount that you want. And anybody that's been in the banking industry will tell you, they look at the written part before they look at the number part, because you have to spend more time and you're more diligent writing out the actual number that you want as opposed to just the figure. So there you go on that one.
We're going to take a brief pause here for a quick note from our sponsor. You're watching the Quality Assurance Podcast, smart, simple, and sustainable solutions, brought to you by PRN Pharmaceutical Research Network, LLC. If you're finding these solutions helpful, don't miss an episode of this 6-part series. Hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform right now. Don't miss our downloadable show notes and freebies. Just click the link in the description to go directly to PRN's site to download the materials and get more information about the QA program, this episode, and other episodes as they become available. Now back to Chris, Jeanette, and Ashley.
Okay, so we know what our source is supposed to look like. We know how we're supposed to document. And I think the two takeaways here from all of the ALCOA-C plus are, number one, that none of this is really not common sense. This is all commonsensical. Everything on here, if we had to just really distill it down to its lowest common denominator, this is just common sense. What we're doing here is documentation. We're writing a story on every patient, on every study, everything that we do. And part of the story is going to be, I made a mistake, and this is how I corrected my mistake, which leads us right into, let's say we do start making some mistakes. Ashley, when they're identified, how do we handle it? How do we document it? What do we do?
So let's just go back to just a simple, I made a mistake on a source document. How do I address it? The correct way to do it is to line through, not scribble, line through, put the correct number or date or word there, and then initial and date the change. So don't scribble. Don't write over, don't white out, don't white out, pencil, no white out. Don't use a pencil, don't erase, a single line through. If there's not enough room for re-entry so that it's clear, like I said, use an asterisk or a star of some nature to show, to delineate down to the footnote area, the bottom of the page, and then write the full date out as it should be, or the correct number. And make sure while you're doing that, you put a quick explanation, error, transcribed incorrectly, incorrect word used. Just do a quick reason for change. And that is clearly a good way to change any type of mistakes made on a physical document. Now, what about mistakes that are identified when you don't follow a procedure, or you don't follow a study plan, or you have audit observations? So the first thing is when mistakes are identified, how they are handled and documented is so incredibly important. And first of all, this kind of comes from a culture in your company, establishing a culture where people don't feel like they're being pointed to or fingers are being pointed at when mistakes are identified. You want to establish a culture in your company that when mistakes are identified, it's going to happen. We are human. We acknowledge the mistake, we address the mistake, we document the mistake, and that is what really matters. And I've been in a few FDA inspections, and there's been instances where procedures weren't followed or or study plans were not correctly followed. And the fact that our documentation showed we identified it, we acknowledged it, we addressed it, we put corrective action in place, and then we put a preventative action in place that was music to the inspector's ears to just see that instead of us trying to hide it and trying to put a bunch of explanations in place that blamed other people or blamed other situations, we said, you know what? Yes, we missed it. We missed it. We did not follow our process like we should have. This is what happened. This is how we corrected it. This is how we put it in place to ensure it didn't happen again. How are these things identified? How do you understand what happened, address it, document it, and prevent it from happening again? This is where a company's corrective action plan or corrective action system or procedure comes into place, because you want to make sure that process or that procedure is clear to your team members in first being able to identify when an issue or a mistake does happen. So what happens when you identify an issue or mistake? So Chris, when you identify
the $1 million question, because
Yes.
you alluded to this,
Yeah.
don't sweep it under the rug. Don't try and hide it. When I was growing up, my parents weren't very well off. And I can remember when I was 5 years old, my dad took me to the store and he bought me 2 dresses, like Sunday best dresses. And one was red with a white collar thing, and the other was a different one. I can still see them in my mind. And I was sitting at the lunch table one day and I spilled ketchup on my red dress. Okay. And my dad obviously saw what happened and he goes, "Did you spill ketchup on your dress?" And I went, "No." Because I'm thinking, it's red, it blends in, no one's
Yeah.
going to notice. And of course,
Right.
I got punished. And he told me, he goes, "I'm not punishing because you spilled something. I'm
Yeah.
punishing you because you lied to me.
Yeah.
And you don't lie. You don't cover up something, you admit it, and then you deal with it." And that's, I was 5. I still remember the dress. I remember the conversation.
Yeah.
Don't put it under the rug. Leave it there and
Yes.
deal with it, right?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. So identification of an issue. We have an issue presented to ourselves. A process wasn't followed. A plan wasn't followed. So the first thing to do is really do a root cause analysis. And I have seen so many root cause analysis that says, oh, because the employee did not follow the process. That's just restating the problem. That's just restating the deviation. That is not root cause analysis. Root cause analysis is when you ask yourself, why did the system allow this to happen? Was training inefficient? Was the process unclear? Was oversight ineffective? That's root cause analysis. That's actually determining, why did this happen to begin with? Does this employee have too much on their plate? Is there too much going on that they can't focus on the things that need to be completed appropriately? So then corrective action, what you're going to do is you're going to address the root cause, and then you're going to do a preventative action. What has been put into place so it doesn't happen again? And then once that preventative action is put into place, you're going to do an effectiveness check, and you're going to ensure that what you put into place has worked and that it hasn't taken place, the deviation, the lack of process, follow through has not occurred again. So that's the basis of your CAPA system.
Absolutely.
The last step is often what's missed for people that do initiate the process. They don't go back and look at the effectiveness. And so it's, yeah, we fixed it, but did the fix work? You know?
Right.
And do you have some timelines potentially around when you're going to check it and that kind of thing? All those details are just so important. because
Absolutely.
mistakes happen. Yeah.
In our last podcast, we talked about SOP development. And so if you determine that the root cause of why a deviation occurred to a process is because the process isn't suitable to what is being completed by the team members, this is a great example of ensuring your processes are developed by the people that are actually completing the task at hand.
Yeah. This is all the topics are all running together so well because we talked a lot about vendor oversight and how it's not just a set it and forget it sort of process, sort of undertaking, correct? And this is the same thing. If you have an error on site and we find out what the root cause is, we put a preventative action in place, everything's great, great and glorious. Again, you can't just set it and forget it. We did our due diligence, but we've clarified it now, so it should just work. And that's foolhardy and not a really good way to approach clinical research or documentation. Again, I tell my investigators that mistakes happen. I've been to plenty of study sites where the coordinators feel as though they're treated punitively because of the number of queries they get in the EDC system, the number of sticky notes they get in an ISF. Now, granted, these are study sites that generally you have 1 to 1.5 FTEs that are doing everything for the clinical research, not to mention the fact that splitting their time in clinic. So those are more opportunities for things to fall through the cracks. And I tell my investigators, I'm like, again, like Jeanette said, don't sweep it under the rug. If you have an error, just admit it. You'll come out a lot cleaner if you just admit it. Yep, we made a mistake. We tried to fix it this way. Our fix didn't work. We tried this, so on and so forth. But a lot of this boils down into, do we really have the time to do all this? There's a time component. There's a financial component because all of our study sites, including our vendors, they're doing multiple things all at the same time. They're all trying to figure out their way to keep their businesses going. Yep. It digs into the normal routine operating procedures of a clinic or a hospital or a research facility or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And not to cast too dark of a pall over it, but if the FDA comes in the door and they start seeing some significant problems, they have some 3 alphabet cousins that they would love to have come and join the party. That would be the IRS and the DEA and a few of those other individuals that they love to bring in. Now, those are obviously very extreme situations that it almost never happens, but still, this is important work. We're treating a lot of people with some tested medications and devices and whatnot. The work we're doing is very important. And the information that we're collecting is vital to determine whether the things that we're studying are actually going to work, whether they're going to get to market. And so all of these points they're just flowing together so well. So at this point, I'm looking forward to our next discussion to see what the next step in the process is going to be. So I think at this point, unless anybody has anything else, we can put this one in the bag and we will get together the next time and have another great discussion regarding quality assurance best practices. Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you, Ashley. Take care, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thank you. Until next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everybody.
You've been listening to the Quality Assurance Podcast, a 6-part series dedicated to making research quality smart, simple, and sustainable. Our thanks to Jeanette, Stewart, and Ashley Hehr for their expertise, and to our sponsor, PRN Pharmaceutical Research Network, LLC, for making this series possible. Be sure to tune in to the next episode as we tackle the industry's QA challenges and offer ideas you can actually use. Smart, simple, and sustainable.